there are certain nations, certain civilizations, certain cultures that are much more prone to living under totalitarianism, authoritarianism, effectively a dictatorship. There's just no history of rebelling, no history of individual ownership over your life. It's just you kind of accept the status quo and you minimize your footprint. You try to be as small as possible, don't make too much noise, and you'll get your bread. And it feels like a lot of the imports from certain countries into Canada are specifically from these targeted countries. And it makes me wonder, and this is just speculation here, but is it part of the agenda to further break down any potential resistance to an ever growing authoritarian government?
This is so fucking ridiculous. Elliot Daigneault, my brother, take three. Let's try this again. We've been trying to record this podcast episode for like 10 minutes, and the software that I'm using keeps screwing up on me. My brother, it is so good to see you. It is so good to have you back. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing, for the third time, I'm doing amazing. Fourth time, I might not be so good anymore, though.
Dude, if I had a Joe Rogan budget, I would just fly in my guests and fly them back out again. But unfortunately, I don't. So
Not yet.
This is
Not
what we
yet,
have to work with.
Jason.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Riverside's about to lose my business, and I'm heading over to StreamYard in January. Dude, I was thinking about how to close out this year. I was thinking about what should be the last episode for 2025. Who should the guest be? Who should I talk to? And immediately you came to mind. You're the numbers guy. You dig into the data. Right Call Podcast is such a huge resource for me and should be for everybody out there listening, because you guys actually jump into the numbers, which is what makes your podcast unique. It's not partisan. You're not talking about what happened in the House of Commons. You're not talking about the trending topics. You guys dig into what's happening, why it's happening, and the actual numbers as presented by our own government, which can you trust those numbers? I don't know. But those numbers alone are fucking terrifying. So, dude, I was like, Elliot, let's do this. Let's close out the year and let's do a little recap. Let's talk about what is happening in our country and the downward spiral we continuously find ourselves in. So, Elliot, you covered a lot on Right Call this year, a lot of what's happening here. What stood out in your mind? What freaked you out the most?
What freaked me out the most is the exact same playbook being used on Canadians that worked during the 2020 to 2022 COVID era, but during the election cycle. It's seeing how a population against their own better interests can be manipulated into following marching orders. And it makes me realize that I don't know if you saw there was a report that came out that during COVID, CSIS and our military utilized Canadians as a playground to test propaganda, to test information warfare, to test psyops effectively onto people regarding COVID, that is. And that report came out, and I was like, well, I'm not surprised to see the government, using these kinds of tools, these kinds of tradecrafts on their people. And then it got me thinking, is that the same thing that's being used right now, but for political reasons? Because, again, leading into 2025, we were going with a majority conservative government. The 9-year reign of terror of Trudeau was going to come to an end. And lo and behold, within the span of about 45 days, the country went from majority Poilievre to a near majority Carney, again, still liberal, 10 years later. And one has to wonder, how artificial can it truly be? Or if it's not artificial, then how easily duped can Canadians, or are Canadians, effectively? That's the one thing that stood out for me in 2025, is just a population that can so deeply believe something one moment and then shift narrative overnight if told so by a higher power, an authority figure, let's say. And in this instance, it was the fear of Trump. Fear is the tool they use every time. It used to be COVID. Your grandmother's going to die. You're a bad citizen if you don't do everything we're telling you to do. And then overnight it was, well, Trump wants to take away the sovereignty of Canada. Trump wants to take over Canada. Hell, sometimes we're even talking about, will he send the military in? It's freaked people in. It freaked them out. It made them feel like, well, we have to fight back, you know? So we know that's bullshit. We know that all along there was never any threat to our sovereignty, but yet people bought it and believed it. It worries me for 2026, big time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I talked to Dan Dix about the brainwashing strategies that
Hmm.
were used on the Canadian people. And you know what see, we talked for a while before we started recording, and then, a little bit during our two other attempts at doing this. But what really confuses me is how none of this ever penetrates the mainstream.
Yeah.
Or if it does, there's this cognitive dissonance in like not wanting to believe it, not wanting to believe that this is actually happening, right? And this report, so there was a recent report from the JCCF, the Justice for, I always screw this up,
Justice Center for Canadian Freedom.
for I think constitutional freedom.
Constitutional freedom. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That's
always
right.
screw it up, and I know John, and I always screw it up every single time. I'm sorry, John. I apologize. It's not you, it's me. I'm an idiot. But they recently released a report going through the documents, showing the exact strategies that were used, showing the exact propaganda strategies that were used on the Canadian people, and nothing, just
Hmm.
flatline, right? Like
Yep.
nobody cares, and I think that this is the endemic ignorance that keeps our country going down this path into darkness. Is that, like, we now know that the Canadian government, the Canadian Armed Forces, the intelligence agencies specifically targeted the Canadian people for brainwashing, right? Using a variety of strategies. There was the nudge strategy. There's the throw the sink at it strategy, which is the one that they went with. That's actually what they called it, the throw the sink at it strategy, which is just overload everybody with bullshit.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. Nice one, Elliot. That's why you're a dad.
Uh,
But nobody cared,
yeah.
right? And then, talking to Sam Cooper, me and him, we do an episode every few weeks together. And Sam unraveling the Chinese foreign interference aspect of our election and the propaganda that was pushed out from China through WeChat into the Chinese diaspora that
Hmm.
matched, that suspiciously very, not just resembled but matched the liberal messaging with Canadians. It's very obvious that there was a whole lot going on around this election, and nobody cares. Everybody's just like elbows up, right?
And I think the issue is multifaceted. So you're going to have, first of all, the reality that psychologically, and that probably ties into their playbook because they know it. People rather a comforting lie than the harsh truth, and nobody wants to feel like they've been taken advantage of, ever. Nobody likes to believe they were fooled or that they were sold on anything. You know, you could go to a used car dealership. You buy this car for 3 times the price you should have paid. Your buddy's like, bro, you got screwed. No, I didn't. That's a good deal. People are like that. They don't like to believe they were fooled because most people think they're above average, by the way. This is mathematically and statistically impossible. Not everyone can be above average. That goes against the average. But most people psychologically believe they're better looking than average, smarter than average, wealthier than average. They don't think they're top notch. They just think they're better than average. So they think, well, those tactics, those manipulation, that works on people below me. That doesn't work on me, of course. Which, oddly enough, to be taken advantage of, you require a certain level of IQ. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme. It's normally it's a bell graph, right? So you're gonna have like dumb IQ level, you're gonna have like the average, and then you're gonna have smart. And the crazy smart and crazy dumb, they agree on the same thing, and it's always the average person. It's like, for example, it's like I don't know, the jab is bad, the jab is bad, the jab is good. Okay, let's go with that. But it's true because to be taken advantage of, you need to have a certain level of intellect. A guy that speaks a lot about that is actually a man named Darren Brown. He's a mentalist out of the UK. Had a great show called oh my god, what was it called at the time? Anyways, the guy is fascinating what he does, and he screws with people's brains. He manipulates people, and he says that at one point he's trying to do it on a street vendor in the streets of New York, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all. And he's like, look, not to be mean to the guy, but you do require a certain level of intelligence to be able to be hacked, to be able to be spun upon, and also to have your guard down, to think you're better than everyone else. So that's number one. Number two, we have to realize that mainstream media is never going to report on that because that looks bad upon them. And when you receive $1.4 billion per year of money from the government, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. The CBC is a deficit operation. They lose money. They would not survive. They would not last a year if it wasn't for the billions of dollars they receive from the government.
Mm.
So indirectly, when you consider also that I think it's above 60% of CBC staffers make more than $100,000 a year. So you can say it's a cushy job. It's not the best paying job, but they're not starving. So you have a Canada that's getting poorer and poorer. Things are getting harder and harder. The economy is going down the shitter. And then you have a job that pays and the bills and you're comfortable and you feel like you have a certain level of authority and power because you shape the narrative. Journalists, they're so fucking arrogant. I mean, you speak to a journalist 2 seconds, they think they are the pillar of truth, okay? Like they really think they're bigger than they are. And then on top of that, you have the government that makes sure that subsidizes effectively your position. Well, you start seeing the exact same issue that you see in research.
Mm.
Researchers and scientists will have a bias towards whoever the benefactor of their studies, whoever the patron of their studies is. You've seen it with tobacco industries, with cancer industries, you name it. They will tend to side towards. Go ahead.
COVID vaccine.
COVID, that as well, of course. So you have that exact same bias within the media. So to think that the mainstream media would report on such a story and help people realize that, you know what, not only were you had, but on top of that, we, aided and embedded in it because CBC and all the medias alike, they pushed the narrative and they were probably told to push the narrative, to be quite honest with you. So we can't rely on them. So when you see these things happening, it's when you realize, no, the average Canadian will not take interest in this.
Yeah.
And it's sad because it just perpetuates the ongoing psyop that is probably today, to this day, still happening. They have free reign.
Yeah, it's happening, like unquestionably, right? Like, I mean, what 2025 represented to me was the year of the great reveal. That's what I called it. It was the year where they stopped trying to hide it, right? Like you saw the push toward digital IDs in Britain and Europe. Now in Canada, we have the GC wallet, which is our digital ID. It's already available in the Apple and Google Play Store for people who want to go check it out. They just stopped caring. They're like, okay, we're here now. I think what they recognized with COVID was that, okay, we can fool enough of the people. Like there's enough of the population that wants to believe that what we're saying is true, that we can just kind of slowly edge out the dissenters. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what 2025 was to me. Like, look, going back to the Canadian election, Mark Carney is not a guy who has a history in politics. He's not a politician. And he's not an outsider in the way that Donald Trump is an outsider. This is a guy who's a member of all of the biggest organizations in the world. He was the UN climate czar. He's a member of the board at the World Economic Forum. I mean, like the World Economic Forum over the last 5 years became like the Legion of Doom, right? Like to a point where like politicians and business people were avoiding it because like it was like a scarlet letter if you attended. Our prime minister didn't just attend. He was one of the guys running the thing. Right? Right. So what we went from the frying pan with our floppy haired retard Prince Trudeau into the fire with Mark Carney and Canadians ate it up. They just went for it, like elbows up. Mm-hmm. Let's go all the way in. Let's just hire the Antichrist to run our country. That's the way it really felt to me.
Absolutely. It reminds me in Star Wars, the Empire, it's so obvious. You see who's the evil person. Right? The same thing with the EU. Okay. You look at fucking Ursula. You look at these people. I don't understand how like citizens can look at like Star Wars and be like, well, these are clearly the evil people in this storyline, and then they go and turn around and they elect people that look and behave and speak exactly the same way. That's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
True. Like, I mean, reality is stranger than fiction. Absolutely.
And just let me jump in here really quick because you said something important. You cannot look at Ursula von der Leyen and be like, that's a good person. That's a great person. That's a great human being. Same with, Emmanuel Macron, right? You don't look at these people like, these are probably really good people. You look at them like, yes, these are the fucking villains. Like, these are the bad guys in every movie you've ever watched. But
Yeah,
it's like, we're like, okay, let's go.
they look like Bond villains. They literally look like the
They
fucking
sound
villain.
like them
They
too, right?
do. But
Yeah.
the thing that works with them is they always take an air of altruism in everything they say. It's always for the benefit of everyone. It's always the tolerant position. It's just double speak, clouded in virtue. It works because I think the West, our greatest advantage and yet our biggest downfall in the West, is our tolerance. You know, another thing that was discussed a lot this year in Canada was the land claims, the land acknowledgement, the Aboriginals, etc., etc., etc. And the spin that's been put on it is an example of why European descent, so people like you, like me, we come from the West, and why it's being used against us. So let me get into this. See, when the Europeans arrived to North America, they didn't land on a territory with a bunch of factions living kumbaya, hand in hand, lovey dovey. Quite the opposite. You had countless tribes and nations warring against each other, conflicts ongoing since eons, many moons, hundreds of years, heck, maybe even 1,000 years. And we're not talking just little conflicts like throwing, bow and arrow. We're talking colonization, enslavement, rape, killing, ethnic cleansing. We're talking about the worst of the worst. But it's not surprising. That's the history of mankind. Men can be very gruesome. So much so that when the Europeans arrived, as a matter of fact, a lot of these tribes saw the Europeans as, hey, these would be potential allies in our wars against other tribes. So eventually we conquered them and colonized them for no more noble of a cause than they were warring and colonizing one another. However, and this is where I'll call it the European exceptionalism. We have the American exceptionalism, but I think it stems from that, is that instead of enslaving them all, instead of genociding them all, instead of doing what the countless other cultures and civilizations and empires has done to the loser throughout history, we actually kind of made treaties with them. We tried to work with them. And no, we did not always abide by them. And it wasn't always honest. There was some shady dealings, for sure. But for the most part today, they have land that's been given to them. They didn't have to buy it. They receive millions upon millions of dollars. They live with privileges like being tax-free, income tax, sales tax, you name it. They can travel Canada, US, visa-free, check-free. It's basically one big continent to them. There's no borders. And yet we're told that we're the assholes in this. But had it been any other civilization, they would have been subjugated, related to the people that would have survived would have been slaves. The women would have been raped. And that's not what we did. So quite the opposite. We've given them plenty. So the reason I'm saying this is, again, the spin that is being used against us, we're utilizing our tolerance and our good nature all the time. We've gone above and beyond. We stayed in the U.S. with the slavery thing, right?
Yeah.
We need to pay what's it called? Not repayment, but what's the term they use over there?
Reparations.
Reparations. Thank you. Forgetting that Americans and Europeans were some of the first to outlaw slavery, a practice that is still ongoing to this day in many countries around the world. So the tolerance that we have is also weaponized against us because we continuously are told that we're not tolerant enough, that we should be better people. And I think we're good natured. I think our culture, being rooted in Christianity and religion, is one of tolerance, of wanting to do the right thing. And nobody wants to be bad. But the issue is that good requires at times to do bad things. You need to be able to say no. You need to be able to have a boundary. You need to be able to be mean even. Yeah. You need, there's a difference between a good man and a nice man. A nice man has no backbone. A nice man is a doormat. He gets walked all over under the auspice of wanting to be agreeable at all times. A good man will do the right thing. He has boundaries. He has an ethos. He has values that if you trespass, he will defend, fight back against, and uphold. Well, we're at a point right now that civilization has veered so deep into the nice man territory that anyone who dares being just a good man is vilified, ostracized, and it wouldn't surprise me in 2026, locked up in order to continue to perpetuate the nice guy feeling on everyone else.
Well, it's emasculation because masculinity is a threat to the agenda,
Yeah.
right? Because you have to emasculate men in order to impose totalitarianism on an entire population, which, you know, I take a lot of shit from people because like it's like I'm always ringing the alarm on this, but it's like every year the temperature gets turned up a couple of degrees, right? And so like I'll tell you this. So I'm Métis. My mom is Plains Cree Indian. My dad is of French and Spanish heritage, right? And I worked in film. I worked in the film industry for a Big Five movie studio for a long time before doing this podcast. And I used to have to go sit through meetings and they would do the land acknowledgement, right? We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of XYZ tribe. And people in the room would look at me and go, like I'd be like, okay. So the true history of the indigenous people of the Americas is exactly what you laid out: mass murder, rape, slavery, colonization. Like the thing that really strikes me about this is that we are taking every and all efforts to try to remove human nature from the human being. It's our nature to colonize, to conquer. Right? It's just what we naturally do.
Mm-hmm.
And these parts of human nature have been categorically connected to masculinity, and that's why they want to emasculate people. But we think about it, or liberals, I will say this, the left, and I hate framing it this way, but the left in general views it as creating a more compassionate and tolerant society. But in essence, what you're doing is you're creating a weak and vulnerable society, a society of people that will accept slavery and will accept whatever edicts that are passed down to them. So they have to eliminate masculinity in that way because masculine men aren't going to take that shit. Masculine men are not going to be enslaved, and masculine men will not allow their wives and their children to be enslaved. So that's why masculinity has become toxic, right? Because it has to be in order for them to be able to take literal total control over our societies and civilizations. It just has to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It also brings another point regarding mass migration. There's certain cultures that teach value and teach individualism and teach strength and honor. And again, I think most European-based civilization do that. It's about aspiring for more. It's about wanting to not carve your place with the gods per se, but it's to look up and honor their the one true creator and to want it to aspire to be the best possible version of yourself. Now, it makes me wonder, is this another reason why we have mass migration? Not to say that other civilizations are not at the same level, but there are certain nations, certain civilizations, certain cultures that are much more prone to living under totalitarianism, authoritarianism, effectively a dictatorship. There's no history of rebelling, no history of individual ownership over your life. It's just you kind of accept the status quo and you minimize your footprint. You try to be as small as possible, don't make too much noise, and you'll get your bread. And it feels like a lot of the imports from certain countries into Canada are specifically from these targeted countries. And it makes me wonder, and this is just speculation here, but is it part of the agenda to further break down any potential resistance to an ever-growing authoritarian government? You import enough people who do not fight back, who accept everything, who do not have a connection or thread to the history, to the nation, to the ancestry of the land, and as such, for them, who cares if things are different than they used to be? again, it's why are we importing specifically from very specific, like certain countries? We used to want the best of the best. Most immigrants in Canada, and yes, Canada's history is one of plenty of immigration. Do not dispute that. But it was one where we imported people of common heritage. I mean, I joke with this with my mother a few weeks ago. We were having dinner, and I was like, I long for the days where the most racist shit you could do in Montreal was make fun of an Italian. You know, that was the racist shit you could do. These motherfucking wop. You know what I mean? Like that was racism back then. It was the Italians or the Irish or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like today it's like the Italians and the Irish and the Greeks and you name it. Any European, it's like, yo, you're my brother
Yeah.
against a horde,
Yeah.
of non-brothers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
To an extent. So, maybe it's a little controversial to say that, but we've imported cultures that are incompatible, or at least fundamentally at odds with our culture, and we're also seeing what it does. I've been making a few videos highlighting, without commentary, but just highlighting some of the insanity that we're seeing in our streets. Protesters chanting "Death to Canada," "Death to the U.S.," "Death to Israel," over and over again, flying the flag of foreign nations, burning the flag of their host nation, in this instance, Canada or the US. And it just makes you wonder, okay, well, is it possible that these people will never integrate, do not want to integrate, and quite the opposite, they want to see you crumble and die? And if that's the case, are you just going to accept it under, again, the label of being tolerant and kind? I mean, these people are looking at you in the eyes and they hate you. They want to eat your lunch. They want to take your money. They want to take your land. They want to kick you out. They want to subjugate you. It's like, okay, you're just going to let it happen. Is that how weak we've become? Because we're just scared, again, to just say no. And that's in 2026. I think that's the message. That's going to be the angle I'm going to take with all content. You can't just say no. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, there's a lot of parts to it. I mean, I think that the major overarching ambition is to destroy the culture, because a cultureless people who don't have a culture, they're perfect to be molded and shaped in the image or the vision of whatever government or bureaucratic forces are at work, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's the big one. The big one is to destroy the pre-existing culture, what existed here for well over 100 years, because a society that has a culture has principles and values and rules that they adhere to. They have a central action that they all follow. And
Yeah.
usually that culture is informed by a common religion or a common belief in God. And that's why God has been degraded to, a punchline in our society, right?
Hmm.
That's that. So you have to destroy the culture, and how do you destroy the culture? Well, by introducing, many cultures that exist in conflict to the one that already exists, right? So, we're importing. I mean, we're importing tons of people from India. Well, you have 2,000 plus cultures that exist in India, but what are the prevalent ones that are arriving here in Canada? Well, the Punjabis, right? And it's because their culture, right, conflicts with ours. Same with Muslims; their culture conflicts with ours. You're seeing this thing in the United States right now with the Somalis and the issues that they're having. Well, it's because their culture conflicts with American culture, and that's what it's all about. It's about deteriorating the cultural tapestry, and it's not to say that these cultures are bad or these people are bad. It's to say that we, as as Westerners, but as, let's just use our country as an example, we as Canadians have a specific standard that we accept to be met. Right. But what we did was, prior to the arrival of all these people, we spent nearly a decade telling ourselves and each other that our culture and our way of life is bad and oppressive. And, again, toxic masculinity, transgenderism, all these things are introduced to degrade the culture and make our view of our own culture one of, well, we're evil. And then you introduce all these other cultures, and once you have that belief that your own history is one of oppression and slavery and destruction, which again go back to the truth and reconciliation part of it, right? The way that we've adopted this view of like doing land acknowledgements and you know, we have tricked ourselves into believing that we are naturally evil as a society. So then you introduce all of these other cultures again that are asymmetrical with our own, and we don't expect integration. In fact, we expect them to kind of carry on and create something new. But what that happens in doing that is it creates chaos. And that's where we are.
Absolutely.
We're in total chaos. Dude, before we started talking, I'm really glad you and I talked for like half an hour because I was fucking fuming this morning. I had to go out and do some running around, run a few errands in the morning. It is cold here in Alberta. It snowed. We had a fucking blizzard roll through yesterday. We had an 80-car pileup on the highway. I could not leave my town for hours because we had an 80-car pileup. And everywhere I go, it's people from somewhere else who don't know how to drive in the fucking snow,
Oh
right?
my God, I had the exact
So
same.
now here's the thing. I'm not an anti-immigration person. I love people. My wife is the product of immigrants. Some of my best friends in the world are immigrants. Simmer on the right call, your co-host, he's an immigrant.
Yeah.
But here's the difference. The difference is prior to roughly 2015, but I'd go back as far as 2010, the expectation was if you come here, you integrate into our society, you accept our laws, our rules, our principles, our values. And if you don't live by them, then too bad, you either go to jail or you get the fuck out. But that changed, that attitude changed. So now we are in the scenario where I have a town full of people from other places who are driving around on all season tires smashing into each other. And this is just a small example, but it's an example of a much bigger problem. And the problem
Yeah.
is that we don't have pride in who we are anymore because it was systematically destroyed. And so we can't, if you hate yourself and you hate the place that you're from, how do you expect anybody else to live up to your standard? Your standard is shit in your view. So you're looking to them to kind of guide you. And that's why we are where we are now. You know, I saw your video the other day of it was a huge Free Palestine
Hmm.
march. I don't know where that was, in Toronto or Montreal or somewhere. And see, like for myself, I look at what's happening in Palestine. This is my view, my personal view. I see it as a genocide. But what I see in these marches, what I see in these protests is something different.
Yeah.
Okay. Palestine is cover for something else, for something that's underneath it. And what's underneath it is this desire to not just introduce your own values and beliefs into our system, but to take it over.
You know, two things can coexist at once, and this is another thing that requires discernment and that is never spoken about because everything is polarized into yes or no, one or zero. You can believe that what's going on in Palestine is a genocide and is wrong, while simultaneously thinking that it doesn't and shouldn't spill into Canadian streets, and you shouldn't bring your issues here. You shouldn't turn against Canada because of it. You can want Canada to be Canadian, our borders to be secure, and our people to be, law abiding, while also saying, you know what, what's going on in Palestine is horrible. And we can help to an extent, but turning the streets of Canada into Palestine and allowing these people to hold hateful rallies where they scream death to Canada, death to Canadian allies, name it what you want, is not okay. I'm Another big revelation of 2025, I would say, and this is a positive, it's a silver lining, I would say, is that a certain term, which used to be very fringe, has now become part of the mainstream. And that term is re-immigration. It is now something that is openly discussed. So that is my hope for 2026, that people will come to the realization that re-immigration is perhaps what's needed. Now, if I dive a little bit into it, the reality is, yes, most immigrants are good people. Let's start with that premise. They are. They are absolutely good and they're not causing an issue. But the problem is that the system has failed so fundamentally at keeping track of who's good and who's not, and who's here legally and who's not here legally, that we kind of have to start from anew. We kind of have to start fresh. At this point, you know what? I would be fine with cancellation of all visas, all permanent residency, say you go out, leave. If you had one already, you can reapply with priority. Let's re-examine, let's put actual checks and balances. Because we've let in so many people, from criminals to terrorists to just unlawful residents that are expired visas or whatnot, the visa mills of Toronto, and I mean what you've mentioned, by the way, about the drivers, that is such a good point. But it's causing chaos and mayhem on our streets. It's dangerous for our civilians. You have commercial drivers that don't even hold a valid license, or that was given to them because they bought it for, you know, a fucking couple $1,000s, and they're driving. They don't understand our laws, don't understand our rules, and they're causing manslaughter, death, carnage on our streets just due to their incompetency. That's not okay. That's complete disregard for the safety of our people. So I'm starting to become a very big proponent on re-immigration. It's not nice. It's not. But again, it comes to a point of, who do you care about the most? Because you need to put, let's use the term fucks, right? Mark Manson talking, you know, the art of not giving a fuck. You have a set amount of fucks to give.
Yeah.
Where do you want to put your fucks? Okay.
Yeah.
It cannot go everywhere. And I'm from the school of thought that if we all took care of our community first, then the world at large would improve. You have much more of an ability to positively affect your little microcosm than you do a country, say, 10,000 kilometers away. So let's start at home. Let's fix our issues. Let's worry about ourselves. And then once that's taken care of, and it can be, we can focus on other places. See, that's what Canada used to be. 60s, 70s, 80s. I think it was an overall a decent society. And we started thinking, okay, we can also affect change in the rest of the world. And we did. But now we're so focused on the rest of the world that we are completely disenfranchised at home. And real quick regarding the car pileup, that's such a good anecdote because I've noticed the same thing too. This year we've had plenty of snow in Montreal as well, and I was having a discussion. I'm like, why does it feel like everyone forgot how to drive? And every year you always have like one day or two where, like, you know, you have a little bit of an adjusting after for snowfall, but like it feels considerably worse this year.
Yeah.
And then I realized I started doing this, and it's sad, but every time I would see someone struggling or driving too slow or not understanding that, you know, the lanes are getting a little bit narrow because there's snow on the side and it's been plowed on the side, and you have to adjust your driving based on that. When I pass them and I look inside the car, let's put it this way, it's hardly ever a seasoned winter driver.
Yeah. No, dude, so I have this, every time, so in the Calgary area, we're connected by highways, right? We have a series of freeways and highways that connects the city. I frequently almost get ran over or run off the road by a big rig, like daily almost, right? Every fucking time I pull out and pull around to get away from this guy, I look in my rear view and I hate to say it, but I see the exact same person. Right?
You see a turban, eh?
Yeah, and this is the thing. I don't want to see this. I don't want this to happen. You know what I mean? Like I don't have I'm not somebody who has prejudice built into me, right? Like I love people, and I love people for who they are, not the color of their skin or not. But it's like, I am of the belief that this was done intentionally. I think the other part of it is, if you introduce 5 to 15 million dependents into your country, those are people who are never going to dissent against the government. Those are never going to be people who are going to fight back when your government becomes dictatorial, because not only are they dependent on them economically, but they are dependent on them for just their life in general, right? Because their citizenship is on the line. Their
same thing as the CBC.
residency. Right.
It's the exact same thing. If you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you, you know?
Exactly. And dude, you know, something I do want to bring up, because this is, I think that this is an important juxtaposition, is that, like, I have a lot of people in my community who are Nigerian. Nigerians are wildly successful. And, you know, some of the newer people in this country I've gotten to know, I consider them friends, and I've kind of dug into their culture a little bit. Why are they so successful? And there's three components that I can see. First, most are Christians, if not all. The ones that are coming to Canada are Christians. So they have a strong spiritual foundation, right? Number two, community. As soon as they arrive, they get in touch with each other via Facebook and other things. They all help each other out, help each other get ahead, right? 3, education. Education is top priority in their homes. They will not accept, like, I know a young guy who's on his way to becoming like the next great designer. This guy is fucking brilliant, but his dad is like, fine, you want to make clothes, you want to build houses, great, but you're going to get an engineering degree just to
Hmm.
just to be safe, right? And I guess a fourth component is the men. The men are the heads of their households. They have a
Yeah.
traditional family, right? Like, and again, this goes back to their spiritual foundation. But the men are the men in the house. So, I hate to say this, but like, some of these white guys that I see walking around, like it's like they've been had the shit kicked out of them every fucking day, and they can't fight back. They can't do anything. They're just so totally emasculated and demoralized and just destroyed that
They are.
they're nothing. Right?
But at the same
They got
time,
these big pot bellies and these stick thin arms, and and the only time they feel like a man is when they're in their lifted truck harassing people and tailgating guys like me on the fucking highway, right? But in person, in real life, you see these guys, you're like, Jesus, your will to live has been completely sucked out of you.
but you have to look at what's happened. I saw a post today that said, and then it showcased a bunch of data, but it said if you're a white man under the age of 40, it's official, you've been discriminated against your entire life.
Right.
Period. And then it goes into why, from school admissions to job applications to government programs, you name it. We've been made to, like, I remember even in elementary school, and I have a young boy, right? He's 2.5, and I see it already how physical he is. It's all about physical. It's all about wanting, he's got a bit of aggressivity. He wants to do things. He wants to run around. He wants to do things. And I see it already a little bit. Like, I'm very enabling of it. Go, 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 do it.
Yeah.
Get it out of your system. But I remember in elementary school, we'd be playing football, okay, in the yard, bunch of boys playing football, and we played tackle football with no equipment, nothing. Fuck
Yeah.
it, it is what it is, and it got rough. It was always one of the school lunch lady, right? Always a woman. Don't do this, boys, and grounding us for being a little bit physical. To an extent, it was done, of course, to prevent injury. I get it. I don't think they were trying to do bad things, but the more you have these emasculated or feminine-led beliefs, you're always repressing the men within. Contrast that to a civilization like Sparta back in the day, where at 5, the kid was freaking taken under the wing and taught like military discipline and strength and physical work and And by 7, he was like left out in the forest with a knife and said, "Find your way back."
Yeah.
It's huge differences. Then further to that, we have this bombardment all the time of media and narrative that tell us we're wrong. And you have to ask, why is that? Again, we spoke about the CBC and the money that comes in. But one of the statistics that I looked at from that post is that since 2010, the proportion of white men that work in newsroom, that work for newspapers, that work in journalism effectively has dwindled all the way down to roughly 10 to 12% today, where it used to be the majority before. Now they only represent 10 to 12% of the staff. And oftentimes they're strictly the boomers that have not been fired yet. But all new hires have never been white men. They've always been, again, marginalized people or women or group of this and group of that. Now, is it a surprise then that all the reporting has centered around such things? I've made a video and I covered it in the Right Call podcast, but since 2015, the instances of media reporting on certain ideologies like feminism, like anti-Semitism, like racism, like bigotry, like LGBTQI2WXYZ topics has gone from very marginal levels, like 1, 2, 3%, to it's spiked. It spiked in the most unnatural way there is. But again, marketing, any great marketer will know this. The trick to marketing is repetition, 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 exposure, 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 exposure. Even Trump talks about it. What is truth? What is truth? Well, I mean, the truth is whatever you repeat 100 million times. That's the fucking truth. Well, is it such a surprise today that all these men feel emasculated? They've been told that they're toxic. They've been told that they're less deserving. They've been told that they're oppressors. They've been told that all these other people are to be venerated and edified and put on a pedestal, while they should bow, us white men should bow over and roll over and eat and give our lunch, take our lunch, eat our lunch. Eventually, it also leads again to a civilization, a society that has no more backbone, and where people don't stand up. I mean, I try to think of my like I try to imagine a any civilization, like not even that far ago, like 100 years ago, just 100 years ago. Take any country in Europe, take America, take Canada,
Yeah.
take Mexico. I don't give a fuck. Take the country you want and implement the same ideologies that are being force fed upon us today. What would happen? Would people just swallow it up, or would there be a massive pushback? The people promoting it would have been arrested, or you don't have to arrest them. Fuck it. I believe in freedom, but they would have been chastised. They would have been made fun of. They would have been repressed civilly. That's fine. Like, they would have been bullied into, like, being irrelevant. They would have been like, you're a fucking idiot. Shut the fuck up. That's fine enough. We need to bring back a bit more of that. Again, it's not nice. I get that. But the reason we're here today, we will have a collapse of our culture, our civilization, and even our race, because, white people or white descendants are now 7% of the world. There will be a collapse of all of this because we were scared to just say no and to just be a little bit mean about it. Like, I would never prone anyone to be arrested for having their views. I believe too much in freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and people's personal liberty. But that's one thing. You can also turn around and be like, shut the fuck up, you're an idiot. It's okay to say that. And eventually, these people, anyways, don't have a backbone.
Mm-hmm.
The crazy fucking leftists in the media, right? The one thing they prone and preach all the time is fucking to silence dissent, to ban, to shadow ban, to censor, heck, to jail people who oppose them. Why is that? Because they cannot live up to scrutiny. They cannot live up to debate. They cannot live up to challenges. Meanwhile, men like you and I get challenged on the fucking daily. We thrive in it. We welcome it. So, due to the fact that our ideologies can survive scrutiny, can survive debate, can survive being fought for and defended, and theirs cannot, well, they try to artificially protect it through laws and social constructs. So that's why I'm saying, if we just start being a little mean, it sounds horrible to say. It's very probably even unchristian. But I mean, look at the Crusaders and the things they did to protect the Holy Land and protect the European life. Doing the right thing sometimes is doing what's not popular. And, there's a few Latin sayings that I love. Si vis pacem para bellum. If you seek peace, prepare for fucking war. It's just the way it is. We're not looking for war. I'm not preaching violence. I don't want to fight. But if you keep threatening us, eventually I'll put my foot down. And yes, I'll be a little mean. And I'll say no.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happening here is we're confusing mean for assertive, right? Because
fair enough.
Because like, I don't see myself standing up for my values and my principles and my family and my neighbors as being mean. I see it as me saying, no, fuck that. Like, you're not going to take what I have. You're not going to take what we've built together. I'm just not going to let it happen. And so if you see that as me being racist or prejudiced or misogynist or all the istophobia-phobes, then so be it, right? Like, you can, if that's the way you view it, then that's fine. But I'm not going to, like, stop being a man because it makes you uncomfortable. My wife is depending on me to be a man. Right? Like, I'm not going to degrade myself and publicly flog myself because I have a dick and balls between my legs and testosterone pumping through my body. You know what I mean? You need me. You need me to do the hard work. You need me out there doing the heavy lifting, and not just physically. I mean, in life in general, right?
Yeah.
So, like, no, fuck you, right? And I think just having that attitude, it's not mean. It's just being realistic and assertive and just saying, no, I'm not going to tuck my dick between my legs and bend over because you told me to, because that's what's the compassionate, empathetic, equitable thing for me to do. Fuck you. Right. But
you're completely correct. You know what? That's the best analysis. It's not about being mean. It's about being assertive. But the reason I say mean is because it might hurt their feelings.
So be it.
You're not responsible for that.
Dude, do you know how many times a day I get people sending me fucking DMs calling me a Nazi, or reposting a clip of me, like just completely skewering the way I look, and again, once again, calling me a Nazi. Bro, I was in the fucking grocery store with my daughter, and I had a white liberal woman walk up to me and call me a Nazi to my face, angry because her fucking husband likes watching Brave New Normal, right? Like, dude, I'm sorry, but you know what? I don't. Maybe this isn't everybody's life, but I get shit on quite a bit. All right, and I still manage to maintain my sense of humor and my sense of self. So, if me
Hmm.
putting my foot down, saying no, we're not doing, we're not going to do what your culture does. This is our country. You're here now. You're going to do what we do, or get the fuck out. That's not being mean. Okay. That's called
Amen.
preservation. It's called cultural preservation, right? And
Yeah.
that goes for everybody. That goes for me. If I immigrate to another country, which I very may well might in the very near future, and I show up doing stuff that is incompatible with their culture, and somebody says, "Hey man, you follow our rules, or you get the fuck out of here." Of course. What you want me to walk through Somalia doing doing things that like are culturally relevant, like culturally okay to me, but not to them, and not expect that, and just expect everybody to bow down? Isn't that a colonialist point of view?
Oh,
Right?
that's such a
Like,
good
if
one.
I go somewhere else, I'm going to adhere to their rules and their way of life. I'm going to integrate, right? So it should be the
Absolutely.
same way here. You come here, you come to my community, my neighborhood, my town, you follow
Hmm.
our rules. No, we don't rape women here. And if you do, we will fucking flog you. Whether that's put
Amen.
you in jail, put you on a plane, and send you home, one way or the other, you will be dealt with. But the problem is that here in Canada, we don't do that anymore, because once again, we've degraded our own culture. And I've used the word degraded multiple times today, but maybe that's the word of the day: degraded. We have degraded and decayed. Our culture has decayed to a point where we
Yeah,
don't have anything left.
it's
So
true.
now you can arrive here from another side of the world, right, with your own cultural beliefs and religious beliefs, and force them on people, right, and face no repercussions, no consequences whatsoever. And this sounds like the utopian liberal vision, but the truth is it doesn't work, because the people who are there suffer because of it.
Well, it's man, there's a lot of points. First of all, if the melting pot theory was such a true phenomenon, Canada would be a utopia by now. It would be. Toronto would be the best city to live in. But it ain't so. It ain't so. So the melting pot theory just doesn't fucking work, okay? You can have immigration, but you need to have a common thread tying everyone together. You need to have a common ethos, a common base, a common culture. In our instance in Canada, call it a Christian rooted European based culture. That's number one. Number two, at the same time, are we surprised with the amount of cucking rituals we've been having in Canada? And I mean that like
Yeah.
truly. We've changed our national anthem. Just one word, but that one word already signals what we stand for. Instead of all thy sons command, now it's an all of us command. Okay, because talking about men and the sacrifices they've done to protect and defend this nation
Right.
is is not gender neutral. So that's, to me, that's again erasing the truth of the country and also what we should aspire for, right? Why do we have monuments? Why do we have these memorials of soldiers and war heroes and just historical figures? It's because we look up and be like, let's keep that tradition, let's keep that going. So number one, we change our anthem. Then what else do we do? Another cucking ritual, speaking of the anthem again, because the anthem is the base, is the core, is the unifying song of a country. Well, in Winnipeg, last year, was it last year? Last year where they sang the song, the anthem in Punjabi.
No,
Really?
that was this year. That was like
That
a
was
few
this
months
year.
ago.
Well, there you go. Last I checked, Canada has two official languages, English and French. There's three versions of our fucking anthem. All English, all French, or bilingual. That's it. There's no Punjabi last I checked. And again, under the veil of inclusivity and wanting to be nice, what we've done is we've devalued that ethos. We've devalued the hundreds of thousands of soldiers from the War of 1812 all the way to Korea who died for that fucking anthem. We've said, we spat on their grave. We've it's vile, it's disgusting. But it's, to me, it's a cucking ritual. It's how can you demoralize and destroy the fabric of society until it has nothing left tying it together, right? It is absolutely an erosion uh, of social cohesion and a degradation of culture. Completely. Absolutely, man.
Yeah, dude, you were making me think of something here. So I have a Colombian family in my community. I got to talk to them the day that they became Canadian citizens. They had to go down to I don't know if it's the courthouse or the immigration offices and get sworn in
Mhm.
and do the whole thing, right? It was the happiest day of their fucking life. I was talking, they were beaming, brother. They were all dressed in red and white, right? So happy to be Canadians. They had been in our country for, I can't remember how many years, but a while. It took them a while to finally attain citizenship. It's the happiest moment of their life. The kids are waving Canadian flags. They're getting ready to go down the office. I'm talking to them. I'm like, man, that's super cool. Like, congratulations, guys. That's awesome. I could see through their living room window that they had red and white balloons in their house. Like they're having a celebration, you know?
That's wholesome.
But that ethos is dying in this country because now being Canadian or being American or being French or being British is not the thing anymore. It's not, you know what I mean? Now it's like, and this is the thing, like, again, like, I know that people recoil a little bit when they hear Elliot say, why are we doing the anthem in Punjabi? But imagine 5 million Canadians going to India and being like, can you do the Indian anthem in English now, please? They'd be like, are
Oh,
you like, fuck you? And that's the right response. That's the
and
right
rightfully
attitude to,
so.
yeah, that's the right
Rightfully so.
attitude to have. Like, it's just that we, again, have this view of ourselves. And I think also, too, it's a patronizing, arrogant, um, and supremacist point of view where we see ourselves as being historically better. So now we
Mhm.
have to handicap ourselves for the people who aren't as good as us in order to for us to all have equity. It's such a gross way to look at things, right? Because it's like, well, we've been better for a really long time. Like, we have a lot of fucking wins. So we're going to cut ourselves off at the knees just to make us all equal. Whereas in the past, like this Colombian family that lives near me, and literally every other immigrant up until like 2010 came to our country and were eager to live up to our standards because they saw
Absolutely.
this as an opportunity for a better life. So they were
Mhm.
like, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to be part of this thing because this thing is better than the place that I came from. And
That is so right.
that's what allowed for us all to live harmoniously for so many years, for fucking decades, right? I
That
mean,
is
more
so.
than
Yeah.
decades, a millennia, right?
Absolutely.
We all got well, maybe not a millennia, a century. We all got
Centuries.
a
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, that was, I went a little far there, but we all got along because we all followed the same path. And
Mhm.
this is what this is. This is what our country is. Yes, we are better, and we are better because of these things. And now you're here. Be better with us. That was always the message. Be better with us. If you come here, live to our standards, and you too can be better, and we can all be better.
But all this reminds me of something actually that I spoke about this week on the show. Again, that's coming out today. Although, I'm gonna bring back the exact same point. Okay,
Okay.
I'm recycling a point that I spoke on the show, but nonetheless, I think it's so important because all these new citizens who come to Canada. Again, I speak of the cucking rituals. I think we start that entire belief system from the very get go. What do I mean by that? Well, the last step of naturalizing as a citizen in Canada is the oath of citizenship. It is an oath you take, and that's before a judge. And once that's done, congratulations, you're a Canadian citizen. But just the oath itself sounds like straight from the mouth of a woke, progressive, virtue signaling, cucking ritual. And I'm like, well, that sets the stage for how Canadian citizens should behave. So, to make my point, I'm going to compare the American oath of citizenship to the Canadian oath of citizenship. Okay. And I'll ask you, what feeling does it elicit? What emotion does it bring to you? Okay. And
Okay.
let's compare and contrast. So let's start with the American one. In the US, before a judge, right before becoming a citizen, you must say, I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. How does that make you feel?
Makes me feel American. It makes
Fucking right, eh?
yeah, America, motherfucker. The greatest nation that ever existed, right?
A fucking man. To me, what's really interesting is that it tells you that you will bear arms on behalf of the country. You're willing to die for this
Yeah,
country.
but again, it's the American ethic, right? Like, we built this. We are a nation of dissenters. We are a nation built from revolution. If we have to defend it, we will defend it to the last man, woman, and child, right? That's the attitude.
Amen. Now let's compare that to Canada. Let me see what you feel about this one after. So, I swear or affirm that
What the fuck? Oh
it
my
starts right
god!
from the get-go.
Oh my god! It's so
It
bad.
starts from the get-go, okay? It starts from the
Fuck. Sorry, please continue.
get-go.
Oh my god! I swear, or maybe not. I don't know. How do you want it? Like, how do you want me to present it?
I know.
These fucking weak bitches. Okay, please keep
Fuck.
going.
So,
Please keep going.
I swear or affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty, King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors,
Oh my god.
and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including the Constitution, which recognizes and affirms the Aboriginal and treaty rights of First Nations, Inuits, Métis people.
Oh, fuck. They put a land acknowledgement in it. Oh my god.
And fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen.
We recognize your right to like roti and to also potentially enjoy an occasional Jamaican patty from time to time. We would like for you to be part of this. However, if you choose not to, you are more than welcome to stay. That's what that sounds like to me. Was that it? Is that the whole thing?
That was it, man.
Dude, it's so, like, we're so fucking weak. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason why Americans think we are such fucking cucks. And this is why. You know what I mean? Like, how okay, now let me ask you this. As somebody who's being sworn in, right? You are becoming a citizen of a nation. What makes you feel more pride? Is it you are expected to defend this nation by any means necessary, should it be required of you? Or, I mean, you can hang out here for a while and, we'd love to have you. And, if you choose not to do the things that we say that we want you to do, then that's okay.
They put more emphasis on recognizing the rights of First Nations than they do of saying Canada is your duty to defend.
It's so fucking wild, dude. Because it's like perfectly representative of what this country is. Justin Trudeau is the human embodiment of Canadian weakness, of just the fucking limp-wristed gay boy Canadian men. You know what I mean? Like, it's fucking embarrassing. And I was thinking about this this morning because I'm in my car, I'm running errands. Everybody's sliding all over the place, hitting fucking telephone poles. 18-wheelers are jackknifing on the highway. I'm driving by it, looking through it, and I can see who's driving the fucking vehicle. And yes, it is somebody with a turban. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I pray to God a lot for patience because that's something I lack. Please, God, just give me patience. Take the anger out of me so that I can have a better understanding of the people around me and that I can live and project love. But holy shit, man. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying so fucking hard and I don't want to be that guy and I don't want to be radicalized either. right?
Hmm.
Because that's the danger as well. Is this stuff, it leads to radicalization. And to be honest with you, I feel that's what we're being intentionally being nudged toward, right? Is to radicalize people like me and you so that they have an enemy to fight. And I
Yeah.
don't want to give them an enemy. I don't want them to have a pretext to come after people like me and you. But God, this is hard, man. You know?
They make it hard. They make it hard. And the thing is, the enemy is the person or the group that are supposed to be protecting us, but instead aid and abet in the destruction of the country. So effectively, our government, they're the ones to blame, and the people behind it. It's not the immigrant who's to blame. Um, do do I wish the immigrant well? Yes, and I wish them the best, and I mean no harm to them. However, if they do come here and they do cause issues, I will hold them personally responsible equally as much as the person who allowed them in.
Mm,
The government, the sole purpose of government is to protect the country to begin with. Everything else, they should get their fucking hands off out of it. That's why I'm a big proponent of libertarianism. It's more like small government for domestic affairs. You represent us foreign. You defend our borders. You manage an army, and that's about fucking it. You execute. You put a court system in place and you uphold the laws. That's it. The rest, let people take care of it. But right now the government is failing at all of these things. We don't have a military. We can't even get our fucking jets in order. Okay,
mm,
jets that we've invested over $600 million in, by the way, just developing. We're not representing for in terms of foreign representation. We're weak in the global scheme of things, and we're meeting people left and right, but nothing ever happens. We're not signing any deals, and meanwhile, at the same time as well, we're sending money overseas, which is taking money away from us. We're not protecting our borders. We're not upholding our laws. And another thing that it made me think is a quote that I read recently, and it's like, fuck, it is so applicable today. All the laws that are being passed, always under the auspice of protection, civil, public safety and whatnot, because the crime is increasing. So what do we need? We need more laws. But no, the laws in the books are already plenty enough. More laws are not going to protect people if they're not executed. And then it just reminded me of this. The more corrupt a nation, the more plentiful the laws.
mm.
And this is what's happening in Canada. Whereas you have a president like in the US, Trump, that says, okay, for every one legislation we're passing, I'm ordering that we repeal 3 or remove 3 to simplify things. In Canada, it's like, well, we already have laws against hate speech, but we need to broaden them and increase them in order to protect Canadians. No, no, it's to go after people like you and me. That's what they're doing these laws for. That's what C9 is all about. That's what C8 is all about. That's what
Yeah.
C12 is all about. So I think we're right now. Canada is probably, in my humble opinion, in the if I'm to be hopeful, I would say in the beginning stages of devolving into a failed state. It's not going to happen overnight,
Hmm.
but the foundation now is so cracked that everything that's built up above it might crumble at any moment. Probably not next year, but again, give it a while. As the economy gets worse, as people get poorer, as the culture further erodes, and as division is stroked as well, because they're fanning division by bringing more people and pinning them against one another. And I'm guilty of that a little bit too, but that's because again, I take the assumption that I am blaming more than one party. I'm blaming the immigrant that comes here and that wants to impose his way of life and who does not integrate. I am, because they hold a personal responsibility for their actions. But I also hold accountable my government for the piss poor policies, and then creating that division and then giving more rights
Yeah.
and benefits to the immigrant at the expense of Canadians. I hold them very much accountable for that. The two can coexist. And yeah, I think with the division happening and all these things, Canada will continue to devolve. I don't see a change. I don't believe an election would make a difference, because I feel like, although I would much rather a conservative government in power, but I feel like either we're too far along, or in my worst nightmare, it's just one big uni party.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest nightmare in all of this.
Yeah. I mean, so That's my fear too, is that,
Hmm.
this uniparty thing is what's actually happening, and that there is no way out, and that
Yeah.
we are too far along, and there is no way for us to fix this. I mean, look, I'm going to keep you for 20 more minutes, Elliot, and then I'll let you run. But you did this recent piece on Right Call about universal basic income, right? And
Hmm.
how this ties in is, I was talking to Josh Udall from Elevate Podcast, an episode or 2 episodes ago, and he was talking about how digital ID is rolling out in Canada, and the way that they're introducing it is that if you need financial assistance, say for example employment insurance, welfare, disability, they're rolling it out that way. So what they're doing is they're using or utilizing the most vulnerable people to introduce digital ID, and then once that system exists for a while, then they roll it out to everybody else, because it's like, well, we've been using it for a couple of years now, it works, so now we're going to roll out digital ID across the
All right.
board. And what really jumped out at me in your UBI coverage is that, yes, that this is how this is going to go. They're going to introduce a universal basic income, and they're going to have the digital ID active at that time, having been active for a while. And then what they're going to do is they're going to say to Canadians, hey, if you want this universal basic income, you're going to need to have a digital ID,
Hmm.
GC wallet, if you want to
Yeah.
receive this money. And Simmer, in that coverage, in your guy, in that segment that you guys did, Simmer pointed out that universal basic income is going to cost Canada upwards of $90 billion. Right. So where is that money being generated from? Well, I mean, if you have a central bank digital currency that's not backed by anything, that isn't printed, then I would imagine that's where that money is coming from. So what the point that I'm making here is that's how this all ties in together, right? The digital ID is being introduced to utilize the most vulnerable people to normalize that system. And then universal basic income is going to be introduced. And then once that is introduced, then everybody, it's going to be like, hey, do you want this free money or not? Which, let's be honest, no money is free. And I am of the opinion that our economy is purposely collapsing because they need to devalue the CAD, the Canadian dollar, to a point where it no longer holds any value whatsoever. And then we have to go in a different direction because we have no choice.
That's a very good one. And it's always what's interesting is the slow rollouts that they do. They did the same thing. Um, Again, that's why I think they utilized a lot of those tactics during COVID to field test them to see how well they work. Because we saw something very similar as well. At first, it's like, well, the vaccine will be given to people, but it's voluntary, and we'll put an emphasis on the elderlies. And then once the elderlies got it, then it's like, well, everyone should take it. And then after that, it's like, well, we're gonna put a fuck. And at first, it was like, it's gonna be voluntary. We're not gonna force you. And voluntary, we're not gonna force you. Turned into, if you don't take it and you don't have your vax pass, then you are ostracized out of society. You are now a second-rate citizen. Absolutely a second-rate citizen. They'll never call it that, of course. And they'll continue to say, well, we never forced you. No, but you coerced the shit out of me. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. If I cannot have employment and I cannot carry on day-to-day life and I lose all freedoms, okay, right, you didn't strap me down in a chair with a gun to my head to jab me, but you know what you did? You took everything else away and you said, well, you can get it back. Again, it's like, where did I relinquish willingly these rights? At what point did I say, you know what? Fine, I don't want these rights. No, you took those rights from me by force,
Yeah.
and then you pretended that, it was all voluntary. Well, they're going to probably exactly do like that. Like you said, they're going to start with a small tranche of society, the most willing and the most the most or the least resistant slice of society. They'll take it, they'll do it without a question asked, just like the elderlies did with the jab. And then they'll roll it out wider for people. It'll be voluntary. You can have it. It's just going to simplify your life, and it's going to be better. It's going to be more efficient. It's going to be all these positive things. Once they reach a critical mass regarding that, then they'll start fucking tightening the screw through coercion, and eventually it'll be everywhere. But they need first that critical mass, so they cannot reveal their cards until they have that critical mass.
Yeah. And, and going back to, what took up most of this discussion today, imagine if you're a new person in this country, you're an immigrant. And I don't mean like you arrive sometime months before this rolls out. I'm talking about if you arrived here in the last 5 years, and they're like, hey, listen, we know that you need certain social, you require certain social assistance. We know that you need these programs, so download the GC wallet onto your phone, and we will distribute the funds to you that way. How resistant are you going to be to that, especially being a foreigner in
Yeah.
this country that you're trying to make your new home? You're going to be very, very enthusiastic about adopting something like that, right? Because you're going to have no other choice. And that's the point,
Hmm.
is removing the options. And that's, I guess, to kind of cap this off for what I see in 2026, I see a further restricting of the options, a further removal of options from our daily lives, so that eventually people like you and I get ground down to a point where we have to accept a universal basic income because we have no other income. Like, I'll be honest with you, brother. Like, if were it not for this podcast for the last year, I don't really know where I would be in terms of income, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no jobs anywhere. There's nothing happening, right? Like, and that's another problem that we're facing. Another economic issue we're facing in this country is that we've added 5 to 15 million new people to this country when there were no jobs to begin with. And so, you have the liberal government talking about adding, I can't remember what the number was. I think it was like 40,000 or 70,000 new jobs or something, but they're all part-time jobs. They're low wage labor, right?
And mostly in the province of Alberta only, by the way.
Exactly. Right. But the point is like, you, again, I guess maybe this is the theme of the conversation today, but we have a certain standard, a certain quality of life that we expect in our country. And we don't necessarily expect our government or the bureaucracy to provide that quality of life for us. We expect to be able to work for and build that quality of life. But what's happening is that our ability to work for and build that quality of life is slipping through our fingers. And
Yeah.
so you have people like Mark Carney, the Brookfield asset manager, the UN climate czar, the World Economic Forum board member, standing in front of a podium telling Canadians, you're going to have to accept a lower standard. Those were his words, exactly. Maybe not verbatim, but exactly. Those were his
Hmm.
words to Canadians. You're going to have to accept a lower standard. And so for us, the people who have built this country, we now have to accept a lower standard. And the people who are coming here are willing to accept that lower standard because the lower standard is still better than the one that they're coming from.
That's that, man. I think you nailed it, and it's exactly what's going to happen. And it ties into also another term that I love, the enshittification of everything. Everything is being enshittified. Everything. Fucking air travel, fucking public transport, you name it. Fuck our roads, our healthcare, everything is enshittifying. Yeah, no, that's and that we can call immigration or mass migration, we could call it just a great Trojan horse. It can be used to destabilize a civilization in the most insidious way while offering one of the most emotional, eliciting, virtue signaling gift for a country. Well, why wouldn't you want a poor mother and their kids starving in fucking Botswana to come to Canada? They just want a better tomorrow. You're not really realizing that at the port of entry, it's actually fucking, 40,000 military-aged men that are savages and fucking looking to rape your women and fucking eat your food, you were shown. What's fucked up is that, like, again, now it makes me think, all those like commercials you saw like when I was a kid at least, or maybe even a teenager, late night TV. Now for $1 a day you can
Yeah.
feed a family in Africa. And like, was that all part of the psyops? Was just setting the fucking groundwork? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, because look, the story of the immigrant is one we all know well, right? And you're absolutely right. When I think of immigrants, I think of my mother-in-law who arrived in Canada in what, 1984, 1985, somewhere around there. Who came to this country, made a wonderful life for herself. She has owned multiple properties in her lifetime. She made Canada her home. She, at this point, she's more Canadian than she is Filipino. But she adjusted to our way of life. She integrated. She had her daughter here, who ultimately became my wife and the mother of my children. That's a success story. That's the immigrant success story, and that's the one that we all think about, and the reason why we all empathize with their story. But let me pose this to the listener and to people who have been listening to me and Elliot for the last hour and have been cringing because they think the things that we've said is wildly prejudiced. Imagine yourself going to a country that is better than the one that you live in currently. And when you arrive, the red carpet is rolled out. You are handed free money, free housing, a free car, right? Which is actually happening in this country. You are given instant access to a ton of resources, which basically equal your living, your way of life, the way you put food on the table. You're given free food because food banks are available to you. And where you are from, food banks do not exist. Is there going to be any incentive for you to want to do better? Right? If your oath to the country is, I swear or affirm to try my very best to adhere to the laws of this nation. However, if I don't, no big fucking deal because you'll be back out of jail in a day or two anyways. What incentive is there for you to live up to a certain standard and for you to do better? There is none.
There's none, yeah.
We want to believe that everybody has the aspiration to do better, to be better, to want to be part of something that is better. And I'm sure there are a lot of people like that. But there are a lot of bad people in the world too, who just look to take advantage of weak and vulnerable nations like the one Canada is now. And those are a lot of what that is a lot of what we're dealing with in this country, and a lot of what Americans are dealing with in the United States, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
brother. This was
that,
supposed to be a recap and a look forward, but I guess
so yeah, yeah. Well, let's look forward to a 2026 where the Liberals, through a backroom deal, managed to get majority and then shove down our throat a much more aggressive version of what's been going on for the last 10 years.
Yeah. Let me ask you this in closing, final question, Elliot. And we'll try to end on a positive note. Do you see a scenario in 2026 or even the years ahead where Canadians finally have enough and flip the tables and say, look, we got to change this now, through drastic means, because our livelihoods, our actual lives are being threatened by this dictatorial technocracy that's being erected around us? Do you see a scenario where that happens?
Um, the best way I could answer, I don't know if there's a scenario where we win. Okay. However, I will say that I see a scenario where there is more and more of a mass awakening, a great awakening, if I can call it that. I remember when I used to write posts on Facebook back in like 2015, and the engagement was near zero, and people that did engage were against everything I said. Now I talk about things in probably an even more honest and perhaps even controversial, per the narrative standard. And yet my messages and DMs are filled with people who agree, or people that voice their experience. Can't tell you the amount of times I've had someone say like, hey, like, how do I talk to people about the things that I see? Because I know they're going to judge me if I do. But you know what? Now these people are reaching out and questioning these things. We're seeing more and more Canadians and Americans making content online denouncing or pushing back against the mainstream narrative. I feel like by trying to centralize so hard the mainstream narrative again and censoring any other voices, they've effectively empowered the Streisand effect and caused those voices to become even more amplified. So if the tendon, or that's French, tendance, if the trend,
Fucking French.
right, fucking French, if the trend continues, as it's funny because I just did my first ever French show. I was invited. It's a comedian here in Quebec that actually was on Joe Rogan, oddly enough, like a pretty big guy. He has a podcast, so I went on it, but it was all in French. So, but anyway, so if the trend continues, I feel like we're going to reach a critical mass. The reality is also the most asleep group of our society is actually the boomers. And for better or for worse, that generation is on its way out, literally, just through natural means, and perhaps a little bit of made with help from the government. so, the age group of the Zoomers, the Millennials, and Gen X are actually in favor of conservative policy. Now, I don't think they're as, I don't want to say radical, but as like at a point of realizing what's needed to save the country, but they're open to it. They're open to it, and they feel the effects of the last 10 years, and they're getting to a point where they're like, the tolerance of people is limited, and Canadians are very tolerant. But I feel like, irrespective, the history of Europeans and our civilization is one of tolerance to a point. And then when pushed, the good men who just wanted to be fucking left alone, they put their foot down and they fight back with extreme prejudice until they can go back to being left alone, enjoying their life. So I think that is coming. And I'll end on this point. Sadly, for better or for worse, but I really do believe that it's only once at the precipice that people truly find the will to change. And we're nearing it. We're not quite at it yet, but you know, we can sing the song,
Yeah.
Hold me down, I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm looking, like, so there you go. We're we're damn close to it. We're damn
Yeah.
close to it. And once our back is truly against, at the precipice, then we're about to fall off the cliff. People will fight back. It will be harder then than it is today. Every day that goes by, it's going to get a little harder and a little harder. There are more control, more rules, more systems in place to prevent rebellion or fighting back. But people have more power than they realize. All of this stops, and I mean it. All of this is another realization I've had in the last few years, whether it's business or just social media. It's just everything is man-made. All the laws that we have, all the rules that we have, all the way we interact, it's all fucking man-made.
Mm-hmm.
The second people look and say no, it stops. That's it. Just all you have to do is say no. If enough people say no, the people in power don't have power. The people in control don't have control. The
Mm-hmm.
people that pull the strings can't pull the strings. They are relying on your acceptance of it all, but that dies the second you say no. So there you go. That's my closing thought.
I don't want to add anything to that because that was so fucking powerful and important. And this is the New Year's Eve episode. Tomorrow, everybody's going to wake up in 2026. And I think, dude, you just nailed it. 2026 needs to be the year of no. Elliot Daigneault, where can everybody find you?
So Instagram, HRH_Elliot. TikTok as well, HRH.Elliot, because my original account did get banned. So follow before it gets banned again. X, please, guys. I need to crack the 1K on X. I'm a fucking shrimp on it. So HRH_Elliot. But most importantly, on YouTube and Spotify, The Right Call podcast. My host and my co-host and I, Simmer, we try to put out an episode every week. We talk about Canadian issues, but world issues as well. So that's where you can find us if you're interested.
Guys, listen to the Right Call podcast. The reason why I have Elliot and Payman and others on this podcast is because I want you guys to get opened up to these commentators. Elliot dives into the data. The Right Call is it's just a dense hour of just information, and Elliot presents it in this incredible way. His reels on Instagram get millions and millions of views because of the information that he's presenting. So go listen to the Right Call podcast, subscribe, follow him on X. I try to share his stuff as much as possible, but I've been staying away from the internet because the internet scares me nowadays. But guys, listen to the Right Call podcast. I really mean it. Go subscribe, follow Elliot on X. We really, really, really need to support the commentators coming out of this country. And if there's one thing I hope to see in 2026, it's an amplification of voices like Elliot's so that we can take what's happening in this country and bring it to the world so that others can see it. The Tucker Carlsons, the Joe Rogans of the world, so that they will take an interest in us not us specifically as people, but I mean what we're dealing with here. Like it's like I saw a clip of Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson talking about MAID the other day that went viral on X, and I'm thinking, it would have been perfect as if like Elliot Daigneault or Dan Dix were in that seat talking to Tucker. I think that would have had much more of an impact, because these are people who understand what's happening in this country, know the numbers, know the process, and know why it's happening. So,
It's
guys,
so interesting you mentioned this, by the way. I'm just going to interject real quick
okay.
because Fox, after Tucker spoke about it, Fox reached out to me, Fox News, because they wanted to do a segment on it and they wanted me to come on and comment. And the day of the shooting, they're like, oh, finally change the schedule. We're not going to cover it. I was like, fuck. But it came damn close, So, but it'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
but this is the thing. This is exactly it, guys. That's the effect that a guy like Tucker Carlson has, and what it does is it brings people like Elliot, who I personally consider experts, because they are drilling into the data. They do know the numbers. They do know what's happening. It gives them the exposure to speak on behalf of us. Look, we're all here right now. You guys are listening to this podcast. I'm doing the podcast. I'm having Elliot on as a guest because all of us are on the same page. We all see our way of life changing, our country falling apart, and the walls closing in on us. And that's why we're doing this. That's why we're having this conversation. That's why you're listening. So the point is that we need to support each other. We need to support the voices that are able to bring the realities of what we're facing to the larger world. So please listen to the Right Call podcast, follow them, and follow Elliot on X. I don't know why he has less than 1,000 followers. It's fucking crazy. And yeah, man, Elliot, my brother, always a pleasure. I'm going to bring you back early in the new year. We're going to do this again, and we'll go on a long-winded rant about something else. And but for now, my brother, happy New Year to you and your family. I look forward to seeing you 2026, bro.
And same to you. Happy New Year, you, your family, and best wishes. Let's make it a good year.
Let's try our best. Or I swear, or I affirm.
I affirm to make it the best possible.